Hi, I'm Bailey.
And I'm Kaylee.
And I'm Deepu.
We are members of the Monadnock Youth Coalition, and today we have Demi Kirby and James Duffy here with us to do a no tobacco presentation.
Hi, I'm Demi Kirby. I am the Youth Services Manager for the City of Keene and also an adult participant in the Monadnock Youth Coalition.
Hi, and I'm James Duffy. I'm the Tobacco Cessation Program Manager at Cheshire Medical Center, which also hosts the Cheshire Coalition for Tobacco-Free Communities.
So today we're going to be doing a presentation on no tobacco. So I'll go ahead and share my screen, and then we will also be recording as well. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wonderful. Every now and then it comes through very tiny for some reason. So if anyone's having issues, please just let me know. So again, this program is the No Tobacco Program, and it was created in collaboration with the Cheshire Coalition for Tobacco-Free Communities, Cheshire Medical Center, and City of Keene Youth Services Department. We also want to take the time to thank some of our funding sources, including the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services for the Division of Public Health Services and the Tobacco Prevention and Cessation. And then we also just want to give a disclaimer to our audience members that there can be some sensitive content, some visuals in the presentation. So just to kind of be aware of that there may be some more graphic content as we continue on.
Thank you, Demitria. So we're going to start out today talking about smoking tobacco. We're also going to discuss vaping and smokeless tobacco as well, and a lot of issues and topics that surround these three things. So, but first off, I'd like to start with a little quiz. I have a question for you. So each day, how many people younger than 18 years of age smoke their first cigarette? Anybody want to take a guess?
Probably either 1,200 or 2,000.
Correct. C. I'm going by your last answer there. Yes, and if smoking continues at this rate among youth, and that's 18 years of older, 5.6 million of today's Americans younger than 18 are going to die prematurely from a smoking-related illness. That's a lot of people. And that actually represents about 1 in every 13 Americans aged 17 years or younger who are actually alive today. So good answer. Yep, 2,000 people a day.
Very scary statistic.
Yes, yes. Now, in New Hampshire, we're about, with cigarette use in New Hampshire compared to the rest of the United States, we're a little less than the national average. 16.1% of Americans, these are based on 2018 statistics, smoke cigarettes as compared to 15.6 in New Hampshire. And the rate among high school students is about 5.5% in New Hampshire and 6% in nationally. And that's from 2019 figures. So, yeah. So on average, here's another quiz. The life expectancy of a smoker is how many years less than a non-smoker?
Is it C, 10?
Correct, 10 years. A smoker today can expect to have 10 years less of life than a non-smoker. Correct, 10 years. So how many people die from smoking every year in the United States? Take a guess.
Maybe C, 250,000.
No, do you want to try again? Or, but we have the answer there. It's 480,000 people die every year in the United States from smoking, illnesses caused by smoking. And they can include, so that's about 1 in 5 deaths in the United States every year. And that includes death from secondhand smoke as well, as you can see. Next slide, I think. So out of those 480,000 deaths a year, this is a breakdown of what the percentage is with specific diseases. Now, heart disease is the #1 cause of death due to cigarette smoking. 158,000 people a year die of heart disease, followed by lung cancer, which is about 29%, almost 138,000. And COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, at about 100,000 per year. Now, those are the main causes, probably the most familiar causes of death. But there are other cancers, throat cancer, liver cancer, that are affected by chronic cigarette use. In that figure of 480,000 deaths per year from cigarette smoking. And again, that's about 1,300 deaths each day due to smoking in the United States alone.
Mhm.
Thanks. So I guess, Demitria, thanks. So here's another question with an answer, perhaps. How many people die from smoking each year around the globe? Does anybody want to take a guess? Okay. The answer is D. 7 million people a year die from cigarette smoking around the world. And that figure is supposed to go up in about 8 or 9 years to 8 million people a year if the current smoking rates globally don't change.
Mhm. Okay. So next question for you guys. How many known chemicals are there in cigarettes? How many do you think?
Is it A?
Hey, good guess. So yes, so it is. So it's over 7,000. And again, that's known chemicals. And I want to kind of key in on that word known. So, of the 7,000 chemicals that are in cigarettes, at least 250 are harmful and at least 69 are known to cause cancer. So this slide contains where you can find those ingredients that you might find in cigarettes, where else you can find them, I should say. So we're seeing nail polish remover, batteries, barbecue lighter fluid, embalming fluid, tar that's used to pave roads. So these are all things that people are inhaling as they're engaging in cigarette use, and things you're putting into your body. So next quiz question, guys. Each year, tobacco kills more Americans than which of the following? So there's quite a few scary options there. What do you guys think?
Could it be all of them, or if not, I would say car accidents?
Okay, good guess, Deepu. It is. It's all of them. So that's very scary when you look at, who the different players are and the different events that are listed on there, and to think that all of them combined is, less than tobacco deaths. It's very scary to consider. In this slide, we just wanted to include, because it really also highlights the risks from smoking, as Jim likes to say, from head to toe. So really, it affects much more than people realize, I think. And, it can cause blindness. I don't think many people understand that. Various cancers, as we can see, can, affect one's liver, reproductive health. Obviously, we see a lot of concerns taking place within the lungs, but again, it can happen really anywhere in the body, and it stems from engaging in cigarette use. And, as the slide says, it's the leading cause of preventable death. And then more than 16 million people, in addition to those who are, the statistics that we see of people who are unfortunately dying from smoking, more than 16 million people are living with a disease that's caused by smoking. So again, very scary numbers. So we included some information on secondhand smoke, which I think many of you are probably familiar with at this point. The idea that whatever is exhaled from, someone's cigarettes can then be inhaled by somebody passing by while the smoke is still in the air. Some interesting things that we, just wanted to mention are, things like pets. can be dramatically affected if their owner engages in smoking use, and that numbers show that pets are twice as likely to develop nasal cancer if their owner engages in any sort of cigarette use. There's also, millions of non-smokers who have unfortunately passed away from simply inhaling secondhand smoke, not actually choosing to engage in the use themselves, but simply being kind of a bystander to somebody else's use. Which, again, very scary to consider. It's not something that just affects the individual who chooses to engage in cigarette use. It can affect everyone around them as well. This is just a graphic that we wanted to include that really kind of shows how smoke travels and how it can really, again, impact everyone around you. And that's really what we also want to highlight in our discussion of secondhand smoke, is that it can affect those around you, even, if they're not choosing to engage in cigarette use. It's not just an individualized, impact. Also, secondhand smoke causes the premature death of 41,000 adults and more than 400 infants each year, which is unfortunate, again, as these are people who are not choosing to engage in anything themselves.
Okay, thanks, Demitria. And has anybody heard of third-hand smoke? Raise your hand. We know what secondhand smoke is. Demitria was just mentioning how harmful that is. That's what's exhaled, whether it's the aerosol in vaping or from actual cigarette smoke, traveling to somebody who isn't smoking but is in the area and is inhaling what is exhaled from the smoker. And as you can see that from this graphic, it's moving towards the woman reading the book. Now, third-hand smoke, I just want to give a quick definition. It's a relatively new concept, but as Demitria was just mentioning a little while ago about the 7,000 chemicals in cigarette smoke, and when that's exhaled, of course, someone who's not smoking can inhale the smoke, but what we're knowing, these fine particulate matters end up getting embedded in things like perhaps the chair that the woman is sitting in, her book, her actual clothing, her hair. It actually sticks to you and actually is there a long time. I don't know if any of you are familiar or have been in environments where there's somebody who's smoking a lot, the whole room smells, or somebody's clothing. Even though someone is not smoking a cigarette, perhaps, you can tell by smelling their clothes that perhaps, they had been recently or some short time ago. So what happens is it sticks to indoor surfaces like a couch, and there's somebody exhaling. And remember, those nicotine and other chemicals, 7,000, and they're all not healthy, landing and being embedded in this instance, a couch, and as you see, a young infant and a pet being exposed to them. So it's relatively new, the research, but it's pretty compelling that we can be affected by third-hand smoke as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk a little bit about vaping and e-cigarettes. And this is a model of what an e-cigarette looks like. Now, Juul pods are considered e-cigarettes as well. I just want to mention that. And as you see on how they work is they produce an aerosol by heating with a battery, a liquid, and there's a coil that helps to create the heat for battery generated. And then there's some sort of material in the middle that contains the nicotine and the other flavorants and ingredients in them. They're heated up, person inhales, and then they're exhaled as well. So that's basically how an e-cigarette works. And they've been around actually since the 1960s. But lately, they've become very popular with Juul pods and things like that. And they've been promoted as something that can help people to quit smoking and something that supposedly is not as harmful as actual cigarette smoking. And we'll get into more of that in the next slide, that's not, well, actually, that's not true. But it creates an aerosol, which is not a vapor. I mean, vaping is kind of deceiving. I think it suggests that, well, this isn't as harmful, it's harmless, you know, but a vapor is a chemical that has evaporated. Vaping does not produce a chemical that evaporates. It's a mixture of particles, including nicotine and many other chemicals that just mix in the air like a gas, and they leave drops behind. Again, people can be subjected to second and third hand smoke by people who vape as well. And it's again, it's harmful to people who actually do it, but also harmful as well to people who are exposed to the actual vape or the actual aerosol. I'm sorry, I'm caught up in the hype too, and the third hand smoke effects when it leaves a residue on surfaces. So a quick quiz, a Juul pod. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Juul pods, but it's a form of e-cigarette. They look like jump drives. They're very easy to conceal. They're flat. But how many cigarettes worth of nicotine do folks think a Juul pod holds?
I'd say probably D, which is like 41.
Okay. Well, you're right. The correct answer is D. 41 cigarettes worth of nicotine is in a Juul pod. And that's a lot. Here's a graphic that shows not only with the Juul pods, 41 cigarettes as compared to a pack of cigarettes, but there's other e-cigarettes called the Puff Bar, which holds about 50 cigarettes worth of nicotine. And the Suorin pods, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, they hold almost about 90 cigarettes worth of nicotine. So there's a huge amount of nicotine along with other things in these pods and e-cigarettes.
It's amazing how much they can pack into such a tiny.
Exactly, it's just so concentrated, and
yeah.
You know, it's deceiving, as we'll get into the effects of nicotine in a little bit here. And it's but again, it's marketed to be safe and cool, and that's not the case. It's not true.
Mm-hmm. So our next vaping quiz, guys, is if someone vapes, are they more likely to then engage in other tobacco product use? What do you think?
I'd say yes.
Yeah, you're right, Kaylee. So actually they're 4 times more likely. So again, as Jim has mentioned, you know, these products are continuously marketed as safe, and, you know, they'll help you quit smoking, when in reality, the odds are if you start to engage in vape use, you're 4 times more likely to then move to another form of tobacco use. So again, it really disputes how the media portrays these devices.
Exactly.
And it's all about how, you know, it really kind of sets your brain up and rewires your brain to then crave that nicotine. And we'll provide a video shortly that really kind of breaks that down for you. But again, it's not as safe as the media would like you to think. And it's just setting you up for another addiction, unfortunately. Good job, Kaylee.
Thank you. Yeah.
So the next vaping quiz question, guys. So out of the cigarettes sold in U.S. convenience stores, in supermarkets and things of that nature in 2015, but how many of them do you think contain nicotine? And this includes e-cigarettes.
I think C, 99%.
Okay, Deepu. Good job, you got it. So what's interesting here is many of the e-cigarettes that are marketed as containing no nicotine, in fact, do still have trace amounts of nicotine in them. So again, I know we've said it multiple times, but there is a lot of manipulation in the media. And at the end of the day, it's not only manipulation, it's actually just really lies, unfortunately. And we'll get further into what that looks like and how they do that and maybe why. But yeah, many of these products are marketed as nicotine free when that's actually not the case. The these are some of the harmful chemicals that we know are in e-cigarettes. And again, I have to put that caveat in, like, this is what we know, because it's still, fairly new. There's new developments daily, with the change in trends and marketing and products and things of that nature. But obviously there's nicotine, as we've discussed. There's ultra fine particles that are inhaled deep into the lungs, diacetyl. So many vaping products are marketed towards youth, so they have flavorants in them that are more likely to entice youth to engage in use. A flavorant, diacetyl, is a flavorant, and it's actually known to cause popcorn lung, where it really constricts the vessels in your lungs. And the reason it's called popcorn lung is actually it began in popcorn factories in butter flavoring, is where they really started to see it first, because that's where that diacetyl was initially being used. And now, unfortunately, it's being used in the majority of the flavorants used for vape products. So again, it's really causing a lot of lung issues. So again, we return to that issue. Is it really safer than cigarettes? You're still impacting the body in pretty negative and severe manners.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how these very harmful products end up being allowed to be put in cigarettes and in, vaping materials like carbon monoxide, things that are really poisonous, and, formaldehyde, things like that, tin and nickel, that just,
Rubidium, it's in fireworks.
Yes.
Who is making these decisions? Again, like you said, formaldehyde, which is embalming fluid, things that are found in paints and pesticides. These are all things that, are being inhaled as you engage in vape use. And a lot of things, again, just kind of creating that comparison with cigarettes. There's also a lot of overlap in what's in cigarettes versus what's in vape use, in vape products. So again, you have to wonder, like, is this really an alternative to cigarettes, like they try to portray, when there's so much overlap between what's in each product?
Okay, so thanks, Demitria. The risks of e-cigarette and vape pen use. Well, first of all, I'll start at the top, work our way down. Nicotine in early adolescence causes changes in brains that make lifelong addiction much more likely for young e-cigarette and vape users. So getting young developing brains hooked on a certain thing makes it more difficult to break that habit, and contributes to long-term use and addiction. And also it affects ears and eyes and throats. It causes irritation. That's been reported as being and documented as being very common. And also the aerosols. I mean, Demitria was talking about that popcorn lung. That's serious. And it's a lot of, not only the nicotine, but, these chemicals that are put in them are very, very harmful. And taking the deep inhales that are often part of vaping is very dangerous and harmful. And also, nicotine is known to cause issues with our cardiovascular system. So it's not just smoking, live cigarettes that's harmful. Nicotine, you put a lot of nicotine in your body, and it's going to affect your hearts and lungs, and can affect your eyes and other things as well. And exposing, again, I just want to emphasize, exposing the brain to nicotine at an early age when youth's brains are still developing. We know that the human brain stops really developing at around the age of 25. So kids who are, in their teens, vaping are really putting themselves at a disadvantage health-wise.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so not only is vaping itself not good, since the advent of electronic cigarettes and the liquid nicotine cases that come along with it, there have been more and more over the years reports of actually ingesting that. So calls to poison control centers. And I'll just move across to the year 2019. 5,328 calls with children and adults who've been poisoned by swallowing, breathing, or absorbing e-cigarette liquid through their skin or eyes. And that represents about 50% of calls to poison control centers for e-cigarettes being for kids the ages of 5 or younger. So this is not something that's benign, and kids having easy access to this accidentally, the smell, the taste, it's pleasant, all the things that are used to market them increases the risks of young children actually ingesting this and getting very sick. Now, the last numbers, 2020, that was only done for, I think, a month or two. So that's
I
not
think it's just January into
just
2020.
January. Okay, so it's just 1 month. Thanks, Demitria.
Sure.
So we don't have full data on that right now, but we could hopefully soon. But it would be interesting to see if it's as the incidence is higher than it was in 2019, which was quite alarming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a great point you made about, the flavor and the bright colors of packaging is really calling for young children to then want to see what it is and to smell it, actually taste it.
It smells like, exactly. It smells like candy, a lot of this, and but it doesn't taste like it.
Right.
And it doesn't affect you like candy. I mean, candy for a kid, you get a sugar high. This is much more dangerous and harmful.
Absolutely.
So this is one of the sensitive graphics Demitria was talking about earlier. Because of the combustible nature, the battery powered, heating of the coil, some of these devices actually explode while you're smoking them. And here's a really, I think, a sad and rather disturbing graphic of a man who is, burned after, after he was smoking or vaping. You can see it just blew his teeth right out. And here's another video, but this is a video of showing, that's okay, of someone's, they actually can explode in a man's pocket. And this brief video shows how that happens.
I'm going to go ahead and start the video. I'm hoping I'm sharing computer sound. Jim, if you just want to give me a thumbs up that you're hearing it after I hit play, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
In a California electronics store, 1 minute a customer is in a back room picking out a TV. The next, his pocket explodes into sparks and flames.
He is screaming and yelling. All of his right leg was completely burnt.
It's the latest e-cigarette to explode in a long list of similar cases across the country. Experts saying most are caused by lithium-ion batteries, often used in modified vape devices made overseas. A study showing 62% of explosions happen while the e-cigarette is in someone's pocket or actively being used. Earlier this year, the first documented case of an e-cigarette killing someone. A 38-year-old man died after his vape pen exploded. His cause of death listed as a projectile wound to the head. Now, another e-cigarette explosion caught on camera, showing the potential for danger carried by millions every day. Gotti Schwartz, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Awful.
Bear, it's so scary. And again, I think, as the clip briefly showed, not only is it going off and hurting the person wearing or, with the e-cigarette in their pocket, but they're in buses, they're in stores, they're out in the public. It could potentially hurt anybody nearby as well.
Really an unacceptable risk. Definitely.
Absolutely. So the next section that we're going to kind of get into is one that Jim and I have been kind of alluding to throughout the presentation, and that's really the portrayal of e-cigarettes in the media. So something that we think is important to note is that it's the same players making new products. So the people who benefited from the addiction to traditional cigarettes are now also benefiting from the addiction to vapes. So, the idea that these were created to be safe or to be an alternative, they were created to make profits. It's the same people profiting, unfortunately, and they're following a lot of the same marketing tactics that they followed from years before, where cigarettes were initially marketed as safe, and then it was safer with filters, and now it's, well, you know, now that enough data has come out to say that cigarettes aren't safe, now we've got this new product and this is safe, but is it really? It's the same people and they're profiting from addiction is really what it comes down to, unfortunately. So again, just kind of, we wanted to highlight that there really are the same advertising tricks. So you can see it when you put the ads side by side, that they're really just copying and pasting, using the exact same tactics. So cool, trendy, stylish, you know, even wealthy, a lot of the same, you know, clothes, postures, words even, you know, we're seeing freedom here as a keyword. It's really, it's almost scary how similar these are. And in fact, Philip Morris, who makes the Marlboro cigarettes, actually sued the makers of Juul at one point because they had literally copied their entire marketing campaign, because they were like, why, you know, why make something new? This has proven so successful. So again, it's people profiting off of addiction is unfortunately what it really comes down to.
And a lot of this, especially the e-cigarettes and you know, the vaping thing, it's targeted towards youth. In fact, in New Hampshire, the tobacco industry, which includes, you know, Juul and other companies, they spend $84 million a year targeting youth to try to get them to start vaping, and using the same old tricks that used to get people hooked on cigarettes with. And Demitria, I apologize. Did we mention, I mean, we talked earlier about the low rate of, relatively low rate of youth cigarette smoking, you know, 5% cigarettes, but that the percentage of high school age youths in New Hampshire who are vaping is quite high, right?
Correct. Yes, I do think that graphic is maybe coming up. But
okay,
absolutely,
I apologize.
No, it's definitely something we want to touch base on. Absolutely. Okay. So we did just have a brief film. We won't watch the whole thing, but it really kind of highlights what we've been saying about how this the vapes are almost advertised to be an accessory, to be, you know, a stylish accessory versus what they truly are, which is nicotine. So we won't watch the whole thing, but I would just like to provide a little bit of a sneak peek for you guys, just so you can really see that comparison.
This is an ad for one of today's hottest products. If you don't look carefully, though, you might miss what it's advertising. It's this little thing, and it's called Juul.
Juul looks more like a flash drive or computer device, but it is really another kind of e-cigarette.
Since it launched in 2015, Juul has taken over about 70% of the e-cigarette retail market share. It's now worth about $16 billion, and that success is often attributed to its sleek design. But the same features that make Juul a well-engineered product also make it attractive to young people, many of whom have never smoked before.
And that has people worried, because devices like Juul might be designed to help smokers get off cigarettes, but they're also addicting a new generation to nicotine.
So what makes this one e-cigarette so different from the rest?
Answering that question starts with what you see on the outside.
Juul is an e-cigarette, but it really doesn't look like one. It looks like a tech product, and it's tiny. That allows smokers to get a nicotine fix without having to worry about social stigma, but also allows young users to consume nicotine inconspicuously without having to worry about who sees them.
Going to school, having this in your pocket is a lot better than having like something this big that looks kind of like a lightsaber. You know, you could kind of Juul anywhere in discreetness.
That discreetness is a big shift for e-cigarettes. Since the first patent in 1930, designs haven't been very subtle. The first generation of e-cigarettes mimicked the shape, size, and colors of traditional cigarettes, sometimes even with a fake light-up tip. The second and third generations focused on larger and more customizable devices with longer battery life and big plumes of vapor. Then came the Juul, a stripped-down version with no buttons, no big plumes of vapor, and no complex refilling or recharging. And it comes in a variety of bright colors that set it apart from other e-cigarettes, which made it look like a tech product that young people were already familiar with. That is why people call Juul the iPhone of e-cigs. And that similarity makes sense. Juul's founders met at Stanford Design School, and one worked as a design engineer at Apple. They created the first e-cigarette that looked more like a cool gadget and less like a drug delivery device. This wasn't smoking or vaping. It was juuling.
So again, we certainly don't need to show the whole video. I would be more than happy to share it with the Monadnock Youth Coalition to then share on their social media, because it is a very interesting video. But the purpose was really, again, just to kind of highlight that it's being marketed as something trendy and stylish. High tech, looks like an Apple product versus what it truly is. So again, we're seeing that level of deception. So as Jim mentioned earlier, with the ingesting of the pods, youth are attracted to these products, and there's a reason. I mean, when you look at flavors like banana and blueberry muffin, I mean, who do you think that's going to attract? And they smell like those things. They smell like vanilla. They smell like caramel frappes. And so this is really, again, trying to target those young users to start the addiction at a young age.
And chocolate milk. Oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's sacrilegious. Yeah,
right. And even when you look at the products themselves, they're brightly colored. They're obvious. They look like candy. They look like treats or desserts of some kind. Again, it's all strategic marketing to get the young users, unfortunately, addicted at a much younger age to get the most profits, is what it comes down to, unfortunately. So again, just some statistics to really kind of support kind of the idea that it's unfortunately a lot of deception, and to highlight who they're truly marketing. So many youth who engage in vape use, the majority of them say it's because of the flavors, and because of the flavors is why they choose to engage in use. Interestingly, also, as far as media portrayal of vape use, there are a lot of restrictions on how tobacco products can be displayed in the media, and that hasn't necessarily filtered down to vaping products, as they're relatively new in comparison to e-cigarettes. So they're still in music videos, they're still in movies, and they're really heavily marketed through those formats. And traditionally, who is watching music videos? Again, it's targeting the youth audience, unfortunately. And this is the graphic that you were referring to, Jim. So
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we can see, the youth use in New Hampshire is significantly higher than the adult use. And again, it's because of strategic marketing. So high school students as of 2019 there was 33.8% of high school students engaging in e-cigarette use, compared to 4.7 adults. And this is just specific to the state of New Hampshire, unfortunately.
So yeah, and it sounds like the $84 million a year the tobacco industry is spending on youth is paying off, unfortunately for them, in the high rate of e-cigarette use. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So smokeless tobacco. I can give a little explanation on the certain different types there are. There's maybe most people think of chewing tobacco when they think of smoking tobacco. It used to be very popular among baseball players. It may still be, but it comes loose or in the, kind of plugs, and people just shove it into their, between their cheek and gum. Sometimes it, makes it puff up, and it sits there, and they salivate, chew it, and then, spit it into a cup or something. Then there's something a little more, less intrusive, the oral moist snuff that people sort of just dip. And then there's another product called snus, and that's from Sweden. And these are these little packages that people put in between their cheek and gum, and they're advertised as being just nicotine and not having harmless chemicals that you'd find in other tobaccos. But research has shown as well that it can be harmful, especially with certain kind of cancers, including pancreatic cancer, the snus. And then there's dissolvables. There's little strips, sticks, little pellets. I mean, that looks like chiclet gum or something, and they're designed to dissolve slowly in your mouth. So with the sticks, I mean, you would just, sort of like a lollipop, I guess, you would just you hold it, and the dissolvables as well. You just put them in your mouth and they slowly dissolve, sort of like a lifesaver or something, or a nice piece of chocolate. So again, all designed to be intriguing and a less, how do we say, socially unacceptable way to ingest nicotine.
Great way to word it.
Yeah. So here's another quiz. True or false? There are 1,000 chemicals in chew tobacco.
I would say false, just because I think there's more than 1,000.
Correct. Yes. Yes. There are more than 4,000, and as many as 30 of these are have been linked to cancer. So again, tobacco, not only the nicotine, but the harmful additives that manufacturers and producers of these products are allowed to put in them are very bad for our health. So again, what's in those smokeless tobacco? Well, there's nicotine, of course, formaldehyde. That seems to be pretty popular with all tobacco products, embalming fluids, which is kind of gross. Then there's salt, and another one, polonium-210. That's actually a nuclear waste. And again, mercury, nickel, lead, cobalt. These chemicals are not safe to ingest, but again, they're allowed, they're poisonous actually. They're allowed to be used in these products, and they build up over time in our bodies if we're ingesting these, and can lead to serious illnesses and even death.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and another thing is, here's another quiz. White patches and red sores in the mouth can turn into cancer over time. True or false?
Is that true?
That is true, Kaylee. Thank you. And here's another graphic illustration of what can be caused by smokeless tobacco. Having these products and chemicals in your mouth at long periods of time can cause serious illness.
Absolutely.
Cancer, yeah. And so again, oral cancers, it can cause wounds, tumors, can destroy our oral tissue, gum infection, tooth discoloration, actually high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, tooth decay, and stomach and pancreatic cancer, because you know, ingesting and swallowing that stuff. But even, you know, our you know, we have glands in our mouth, salivary glands, and these chemicals are absorbed through our mouth and go throughout our body. Yeah, we digest them. And there's also another condition, a sudden death from you know, where ventricular, and I can't pronounce that word, but I'll try.
Arrhythmia.
Thank you, arrhythmia.
You got it.
Yes, always. Well, now I know. Now that I know what it sounds like, I'll never mispronounce it again. But it's that can cause sudden death because it can cause the heart to beat improperly, and so it's, again, it's not safe. It's not healthy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To be fair, Jim, arrhythmia doesn't look like it would be arrhythmia.
True. So here's a little illustration about what happens to our brains and nicotine. And just again, to let you know that human brains don't fully develop until the age of 25. So this little video will show things, how nicotine works in our neurological functioning with our synapses. Yep. And you can start at any time.
Sure.
Thanks.
It takes a second for the sound to start on the video. It's soundless initially.
Ever wondered what's going on in your brain when you puff a cigarette? This is a tale of two chemicals, the nice and the not so nice, and what happens when they meet. Nicotine is fast and it's sneaky. Like an Olympic sprinter, it races into the lungs. From the lungs, it enters the blood and reaches the brain within seconds of that first puff. The brain is made up of many cells called neurons. Nicotine actually affects pathways in the brain called the reward pathway. The reward pathway is a normal and important part to our survival. It's the area of the brain which makes us feel good every time we eat or do something we enjoy. Once nicotine arrives at this area of the brain, nicotine attaches itself to the receptor on neurons, like a lock fitting in a key, and this wakes up the reward pathway of the brain. This is where dopamine comes in, the nice chemical. When the reward pathway is activated, dopamine gets released and we feel warm and fuzzy and satisfied. However, too much repetitive stimulation of the reward system can be dangerous, especially with nicotine. Nicotine hijacks the reward pathway, attaching to a nicotine receptor to release dopamine and convincing the brain that we need another cigarette. Every time we smoke, we get that feeling of reward, and so we do it more. This sets up an unhealthy pattern as nicotine tricks the brain into activating those warm and fuzzy feelings with every puff. This causes changes in the brain over time. The longer you smoke, the more and more receptors are created, and each one is craving its nicotine fix. Over time, the body learns that it needs nicotine to feel good, but it can never get enough. That's why it's so hard to quit. The longer we smoke, the stronger the cravings for nicotine become. With no nicotine to bind into nicotine receptors, the reward pathway is not stimulated anymore. This means there is less dopamine. With less dopamine, people get withdrawal symptoms. The good news is that these changes in the brain start returning to normal the longer you go without a cigarette. Getting past the first stage of withdrawal when you quit can be hard, with lots of empty nicotine receptors screaming out for their fix. But the good news is that over time there are fewer and fewer nicotine receptors as your brain goes back to the way it was before you smoked. If you need help kicking the habit, call QUIT.
Thanks. I just want to add one other comment about dopamine. Not only is it, as the video showed, we relate it to pleasurable activities, eating, socialization, but dopamine is also a chemical that helps us think and plan. So disrupting that process in adolescent brains, or anybody up to the age of 25 and beyond, it's another function of dopamine that wasn't mentioned in there, but is another advantage to having healthy dopamine receptor flows in our brains.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah.
On 1378.
Apologize. Clicking off of it. All right, so the next piece that we're going to talk about is tobacco and the law. And this is kind of where the City of Keene Youth Services Program comes from in terms of, wanting to reach out to Cheshire Medical about creating a tobacco presentation program because we have a juvenile court diversion program. So youth that come into contact with, law enforcement as a result of their tobacco use would then get referred here. And then Jim and I would work with them to kind of educate them and give them more knowledge on kind of the choices that they're making and the effects that it can have on their body long term. So New Hampshire does have a clean air ordinance, which just says that, smoking is prohibited in public schools, childcare facilities, restaurants and bars, with the exception of cigar shops, because they can fill out a waiver that says it's essential to their business function. So interestingly, e-cigarettes are included in the state's definition of smoking. So these laws that refer to smoking include e-cigarettes. So it's not just traditional cigarettes. So youth access laws. So in December of 2019, the United States adopted at a federal level, a law that says that no one under the age of 21 is to buy, possess, use tobacco products. And again, this includes e-cigarettes. So establishments, you'll probably see it if you go into a gas station or a convenience store. They are supposed to post something that says that you have to be the age of 21 to buy tobacco products. It's not always the most obvious signage, but they are required to post something to that effect. So certainly we don't have to go through this line by line, but I did just want to provide you all with the actual statute in regards to youth. And again, it's possessing, buying, or using tobacco products. So it basically says that if you're under the age of 21 and you do any of those things, then you're subject to a violation, which is up to a $100 fine, potentially up to 20 hours of community service. And that's for each offense. So for each offense of either having, buying, or using tobacco products, or you can be referred to an educational program, which is where no tobacco or programs similar to no tobacco would come into play.
Thank you, Demitria. And here is a list of some resources that are available to help get more information or to help stop using nicotine products. The first one I'd like to highlight is the Tobacco Helpline for Teens. And that's, you can call or text at the number there or enroll at My Life, My Quit, which is a state program that helps teens to get some support in quitting doing nicotine. There's a Smoke Free Gov. There's Taking Down Tobacco, there's Breathe New Hampshire. And these will be available too, I guess, for anybody who sees this presentation again. But, smokefree.gov as well. A lot, texting and using apps is very prevalent with youth today. Yeah. I'm sort of old school. I'm getting there. But again, there's some really neat, helpful ways to engage in quitting and learning about tobacco use and abuse.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And there's also some websites will have, and I apologize, I forgot to include it in here, but they'll have a chat function where you can chat with a counselor online too. So really you can access it across a variety of mediums through phone or internet.
And again, thank you for joining us, and thank you, Demitria, for joining me with doing this presentation. And here's our contact information. So in case you have any questions, we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we can. And thanks for joining us. Yeah,
let me just go ahead and stop my share. But yeah, certainly thank you everyone for attending. I hope it was helpful. And, I guess I just want to put it back to the Youth Coalition now and see if you guys have any other questions for us at the moment.
So if you guys have any questions about something in the presentation, please either unmute yourself or put them in the chat box.
Okay.
Well, I want to.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say I wanted to give a big thank you to Jim and Demi for coming and doing this presentation and doing an awesome job. And yeah, that's what.
Well,
and thank you for everyone who came and watched too.
It was a great presentation, and I would like to take a minute just to recognize also the Monadnock Youth Coalition youth members who helped to make this happen. So if the three of you could just introduce yourself and maybe share how long you've been with the coalition, that would be great.
Oh yeah, hi, I'm Bailey. My camera's not working right now, so you just hear my voice. But I'm part of the Monadnock Youth Coalition, and I've been a part of the Monadnock Youth Coalition since July, I think. So yeah.
I'm Kaylee, and I've been a part of the Monadnock Youth Coalition. I actually joined the same day as Bailey, so about July last year.
I'm Deepu. I'm part of the Monadnock Youth Coalition too. And I've been here since the beginning. I don't remember the exact month, but I've been here since the beginning.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much for having us.
Yes, and I would just like to say thank you, Bailey, Kaylee, and Deepu. Your efforts and energy is very inspiring. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will make this presentation available on the Monadnock Youth Coalition's social media sites. So we recorded this presentation, so I hope other people can enjoy it. And thanks again. Have a great evening.